I think that if there's going to be one concept that changed the way that I think more than any other concept, it is the concept of axioms. This is going to be a long explanation. So in logic and math, you have premises, and then you build conclusions off of them. So for example, premise 1, workers who work full-time should be able to afford basic necessities. Premise 2, raising the minimum wage would allow these workers to afford basic necessities. So conclusion, the minimum wage should be increased. Now you can argue against this from a bunch of different angles. You can argue with premise 1 saying that minimum wage actually exists not to give basic necessities, but to be a building block so that you can get a better job which will afford basic necessities. You can disagree with premise 2 saying that actually raising the minimum wage will hurt the people that you aim to care about, economically speaking. Or you can say that this isn't logically valid, that there's some unstated assumptions, and then argue with those. Suffice it to say, if this is logically valid and the premises are true, then the conclusion must be true. You must believe in that conclusion as well. Now, you can take that conclusion that minimum wage should be increased and then make conclusions off of that conclusion and say political candidates should be endorsed or voted for. You can make conclusions about the political system that you should engage in. You can make conclusions about the politicians that endorse these policies or the voters that vote for those politicians, what have you. But essentially, you can build up, building these more complex arguments out of these premises. Now, I'm using the term up because I think of this as like a building that you're constructing rather than like something that might work outward or down, but you can think of it in that direction as well. But like a 6-year-old kid who asks the question why to everything, you can also work your way down from this argument and ask questions like, why is it good for people to be able to afford basic necessities? This seems like a trivial question, but it's actually pretty important. Like, where does this moral obligation come from? Is it that they're human? Is it that they're working? Is it that they're benefiting you? And then, of course, once you have an answer to that, you can ask why to that. And that begs the question, excuse the pun, when does this end? When do you hit rock bottom, if ever? Now, there's a more complex answer to this, but suffice it to say that it is actually necessary that the more you dig down, you will actually hit rock bottom, and you can't ask why anymore. And this rock bottom, these foundations that you built your entire building off of, are called axioms. And they are, by definition, unprovable. In geometry, there are 5 axioms that everything is built off of, and they are extremely intuitive. They're about as intuitive as you can be. One of them is like between 2 different points, you can draw a line, and then another one is you can draw that line as far as you want. In mathematics, you cannot ask why to that question. That is implicit. That is stated as a fact, as truth itself, and you can't justify it. Now, in mathematics, it was really important to go down and find out what specifically is at the bottom, and I think the same is true for cognition. Like, for example, one of my axioms is human suffering should be minimized. I have no justification for that. I cannot explain why I think human suffering should be minimized. That is something that is intuitive to me to such a degree that I can't ask why anymore. I wrote some other axioms that some people might have. I wrote, God exists and he is good. Harming conscious life is bad. People have equal moral consideration. Promises should be kept. You should strive to make yourself better. Aggressing on another person is wrong. Descartes pretty famously made his axiom, I think, and he realized that he can't really justify that anymore. Many people, including myself, think that that's maybe not a great one, particularly because it's impossible to make ethical considerations out of that statement. But I digress. This video is already long enough. And if this video is interesting to people, I'd love to continue about how cults abuse axioms, how they can be overridden, and how fascism can trap people with logic. Thanks for watching, and comment if you want to hear more about this.